best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello, welcome to the Star Wars Show, the best place for below average Star Wars. It's time for a special edition of the show again today, knowing me, knowing you. Aha! With the coronavirus running wild and Star Wars news being pretty slow, although we did have quite a few hits of news on May the 4th, here, me and another Star Wars fan are going to ask each other 5 questions. So, it's knowing me, Peter Adams, knowing you, Katie Adams. Aha! Katie, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Obviously, we're just sort of a week in the same week as May the 4th review was on Monday. I'm in the same week now. So I'm still sort of on a high from watching lots of Star Wars, reading lots of Star Wars. How are you? Are you doing all right?
Yes, definitely. Probably the same. Obviously, Monday had the last episode of Clone Wars and had some new stuff pop up on Disney Plus, which I still haven't got the chance to watch yet, but very excited to get around to it.
Yeah, so I mean, that new making of documentary for The Mandalorian is very good. So I watched episode 1 when it came out, and then I think episode 2 is actually up today. We are recording this on Friday, so that's episode 2's gone up today, I believe.
All right, okay. I still need to, because obviously I was waiting for The Mandalorian to hit Disney Plus all at once so I could sit and binge it. So I only watched it all last Friday, but I got lucky and got to watch the first episode in a cinema, which meant it was on the big screen in the super comfy chairs, which was fun. But yeah, so I only watched it all last week, but looking forward to watching that making of when I get the chance to.
Good. And how are you feeling about coming on and doing a special edition of the show, knowing me, knowing you? Aha!
I'm quite excited. It should be good. I've listened to the other ones and there's been some good conversations about Star Wars, so I'm excited to be part of it.
Yeah, so anybody who hasn't listened to Knowing Me, Knowing You yet, episode 1 was with the fabulous Brian Balance from the Dorky Diva show and from his own podcast, The Interesting Podcast. So definitely go check that one out and check out all Brian's work. And then episode 2 was with the absolutely phenomenal Daniel Berry from the Force Cast, who Daniel's just a delight to be around, delight to speak to. We had some really, really great Star Wars conversations just based on asking each other questions. And that's the idea of the show. So it's a case of 2 Star Wars fans who love Star Wars getting together, asking each other questions, and the questions lead to really good conversation about Star Wars, which is what we all love, and it's what we all need during these hard times of the lockdown.
Definitely.
Have you got me 5 questions ready, Katie?
I do. Do you want me to go
Let's
first?
dive in. You asked me my first question, yeah.
Okay, so question number 1. What is your favourite Star Wars game and why?
Ooh, this is a tough one. I've played quite a few Star Wars games. I think the one that sticks in my memory the most is because I played it at such a vital age, and that was Star Wars Bounty Hunter for PlayStation 2. So I would have played that in my teenage years. I'm trying to think. I was probably 14 or 15, I would imagine. 14 or 15, I would imagine. Maybe 13. But so obviously they're years that you really are starting to sort of you remember as an adult as opposed to being a child. And I remember getting Star Wars Bounty Hunter and just loving that game. Not only did the game sort of tie into Attack of the Clones a little bit with sort of Django's journey and how he got selected to be the Clone Army, but also tied in other aspects of the galaxy that were known about, like the Hutts, some crime syndicates, was a prison planet at one point. It was that was a really, really. So the game's not canon, I don't believe, anymore. And at the end, you end up fighting off Dooku's apprentice, who I believe is not a Sarge Ventress, but it's essentially an early design for a Sarge Ventress.
All right, okay.
If I remember correctly, if you Google it up, it'll all come up. I can't remember her name, but it's on this. Actually, the scary planet at the end. You land on the scary planet, and then she's sort of hunting you down. And after you take her down, is when Dooku's like, "Oh yeah, you passed the test. You're going to become you're gonna get cloned."
Fun times
Yeah.
all round. I haven't played that one because I'm trying to think. If you were like 14, I would have been about 7. And I think at that point I might have had a PlayStation 2, but I think I had Simpsons Hit and Run and Crash Nitro Kart, and that was the end of my game
Very
list.
good games. Very good
Um,
games.
Very good games. But interestingly, that game is now on the PlayStation Store, and you can buy it, and it's not been remastered or anything. It's just the PlayStation 2 version, but you can download it and play it on your PS4, so you can get back into it and play it again if you want to.
Well, I haven't finished Jedi Fallen Order yet. So
Gotta get on it.
So so for me, like Jedi Fallen Order, like probably is the best Star Wars game I've played so far, because in this new world where everything's canon, like this story is canon and it fits into canon so well, and the story's like massively told. So I'm probably getting more canon enjoyment out of Jedi Fallen Order, but based out of like memories, I just remember like how awesome I thought Star Wars Bounty Hunter was at the time. And like, I remember like thinking that like all my prayers had been answered at once when I got that game, because it was like, it was very Star Wars, it was very Western. It was, like I said at the time, it was like a breath of fresh air. It was like, oh, like I can't believe we actually got this game. So yeah, like I love that. Honorable mention goes to Star Wars Pod Racer Revenge, which is the second one. I played that so much as well as a kid. It was essentially where you had like updated races and more race tracks, and the idea was that Sebulba wanted revenge for getting them sort of destroyed, but you could play in like pod racer championships across the world and stuff. So very much like a Formula One game, but more fun.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah.
Again, that's on the PlayStation Store. It sounds like I work for PlayStation and I'm plugging things here, but that is on the PlayStation Store, and you can get Racer Revenge, and it's like £3 at the moment or something.
Yeah, so I've actually got that on my PlayStation 4. I did play it a little bit.
Already got it.
Yeah, because it's easier to play. Because like if I downloaded Star Wars Bounty Hunter again, like that's a game you get into, and it's like level based and story mode. So like you end up getting hooked in. Where Racer Revenge is like almost like arcade type. So like you play a level and then like it's done and you can like go away. You don't get sucked in as much. So yeah, honorable mention to Racer Revenge. For me, I always remember like Super Star Wars for like the SNES, and like I just remember that being really, really hard. So I know that some people swear by that game, and like once you get the lightsaber, it gets easier apparently. But yeah, I remember playing SNES is like in my, I don't know, probably in my first like 7 years of life. I never had a copy, but my friend Royce had a copy, and I just remember it being like really difficult.
I was going to say, because I can't remember us having that console. Like, so I definitely never played that game.
Yeah, so I never had a SNES. I had and then I went from that to a Mega Drive. But Royce had the Super Nintendo, or the SNES as it's called, and I remember playing it there. My friend Royce, my childhood friend.
From down the street.
Yeah. Okay. My first question for you then is, if you had to pick a trilogy, like sort of you've got the original, the prequel, and the sequel trilogy, which trilogy do you think has the best soundtracks overall? And then also, what is your favorite track from that trilogy?
I'm trying to think. Because of like how old I am, so I was 3 when Phantom Menace came out, like in '99. So I was quite lucky in a way, because I've grown up with. I mean, we've obviously now got the sequel trilogy, but prior to that, when we thought the story was done at 6 films, I've grown up with like all the Star Wars films in there, which I think makes me quite lucky. Like I never had to wait a long time. So I think because I grew up with them and they're the ones I remember the most, like from watching when I was younger, probably the prequel trilogy, but like the classic score is phenomenal all the way through, like the Star Wars theme. But yeah, the prequel trilogy, and I think like my favorite piece of music from like Star Wars soundtracks, and it's one of my favorite pieces of music ever, is Across the Stars, which is the love theme from Attack of the Clones, and it is just such a beautiful piece of music in its own. Like if you listen to it away from the context of the film, it's stunning and gorgeous. But listening to it in the context of the story, so obviously it plays at the end of Attack of the Clones when Anakin and Padme have gotten married, but it's even hinted at earlier in the soundtrack. So like there's a little refrain from it, which is in the I think the song's called like the Meadow Picnic or something. It's like hinted at in there, but the like Across the Stars itself tells the story of Anakin and Padme's love so beautiful. Like it starts off so soft and tentative, and it's very slow, very gentle, and that for me makes me actually think of them meeting in the first film, like when they didn't know where that journey would go for them. And then it starts to build. It becomes more sure of itself. The more of the orchestra comes in as it starts to build up, and that's like them at the meadow, them throughout the second film, starting to fall more in love and realize what's between them is something that's strong. And it just builds up into this really beautiful, really hopeful piece of music. And I think that's at that point in time, that's what Anakin sees Padme as. He sees Padme as hope. You know, he's had that hard life. He was a slave. He's lost his mom. He sees Padme as that hope for a fresh start, something pure and good and wholesome. And then the string section starts up, and I love a good string section in a piece of music, but it starts up with this big dramatic part, and some low rumbling drums. There's a big brass section comes in, and it's hinting at some darkness there. And again, I think that it touches on the elements from the second film when he goes to that camp and when he kills the Sand people. There is that darkness under him, and there is that darkness which will be there and affect the relationship. And then when it hits the main melody again, it still has in a way that hopefulness, like there's still hope and promise there, but it starts to bring in this heartbreaking kind of sadness to it as well. It starts to feel almost melancholy, and then by the time it gets to the end and it's dying down and the main melody's played again, it's soft again and it's played on a harp and it's very slow, and it's almost like looking back. And for this piece, even though it was in the second film, this part of the music for me happens at the end of the third film. It's almost like looking back with a sadness on things that were good and knowing things can't be that way again. And I think Anakin, when he first becomes Darth Vader, when he first is in the suit that we know Darth Vader as, I think it's shown in the Clone Wars as well. It's almost like he's got regret. Like he asks himself, what has he done when he's in the office with Palpatine? And I think probably he realizes he's been used, and he realizes things have changed and he's done those things and he can't go back. And I imagine he probably looks back on those happier times with Padme with a very big sense of sadness. And for me, that last bit is him doing that. So yeah, across the Stars is like my favorite piece of music from the Star Wars films. And I think it just stuck with me ever since I heard it. Like I always love it, and I like when you hear that music, the scene plays in my head where they're on Naboo and they're getting married. Like it's such a strong piece of music, and it conjures such strong images and memories, and it's just so well done. And I could talk about it for hours.
I think the title's very literal as well sometimes. So like, think about Across the Stars. Like, I'm sure that while Anakin is getting married, it also shows you like the clones being deployed ready to go out to war.
Yeah.
So it's showing you things on other planets, and then also like Across the Stars, you could almost say that like Anakin and Padme spend most of their married life apart because Anakin is a general in the Grand Army of the Republic, so he's gonna go and fight the war now. So although they get married, they spend very little time together.
Yeah, definitely. It does allude to that distance that is coming, and that is there between them. But again, just genius. Just genius.
And I think another thing as well, like, obviously, it goes that thing of being selfless. So, like, Anakin, I just think all the mistakes he makes because he's lost his mum,
Because,
and then he doesn't
yeah,
want to lose Padme. But it's like, I don't know, I've seen some stick recently coming in for Obi-Wan Kenobi because of how he reacts to Bo-Katan when she wants him to go head first into Mandalore to take out Maul. And she's like, oh, well, if you had been like, because obviously Obi-Wan's like cares and has a love for Satine, who Maul killed, who's Bo's sister, trying like, oh, we should just be going head first. But like, you got to remember Obi-Wan, like, you wouldn't go in there head first, because if you go in there head first, chances A, it's dark side. B, you wouldn't be doing that for the Mandalore people. You would be doing that for himself.
Yeah.
And it could lead to, and it's exactly what Maul wanted, if you remember. So Clone Wars does the right thing by like, no, we'll take a step back. Like, we'll ask the council, like, would I want to go there and do that? Maybe, but like, it's not about me. It's not about me getting revenge for Satine. It's not what this is about.
Yeah.
And like, Anakin, obviously, like, when he comes across his mother in Attack of the Clones, like, there's a lesson there that like he did everything he could, killed them all, like trying to save his mother, and it didn't work. Because guess what? Like, sometimes people die, and it's sad. But like, to think that you can directly affect that, like, and bring people back from death, like, is wrong and not right. So, but instead of learning the lesson there, he's just more determined not to let it happen again. So, a game of Padme, he's very much like, oh well. And then the things he does ends up pushing Padme like over the edge more.
Yeah, definitely. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if he hadn't acted the way he did, you can argue that Padme wouldn't have been in the position where she'd been force choked. She wouldn't have been in the position where the love of her life, the father of her children, has changed so fundamentally from who she thought he was, that it leaves her without the will to live. And that's kind of the other heartbreak of it. And I do think you're right. It's about the lessons we need to learn, that life does have a way, and it comes to an end. And although we're not quite Jedi, and we can't sit there and say, well, be glad because they've had a good life, like, that obviously takes a lot to work through to get to that point of grief. But it is about the lesson that he did fail to learn. But simultaneously, like, you can't. I think there are a lot of people who, if they thought there was a chance they could save the person they love, they would try to do it. Like, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and that is very much Anakin Skywalker's story in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, definitely. What's your second question for me, Katie?
Oh, second question. So, if there was a new show coming out for Star Wars, and you could have it set anywhere, like, when would it be set? And whose story would it focus on? So, like, what era? So, would it be prequels? Would it be before prequels? Would it be original trilogy? Would it be sequel trilogy? Would it be after that? And in whose story would it tell?
Is this a live action TV show?
If you want it to be, or if you think there's room for an animated series you'd want to see, then, or you could do one of each, whatever.
So the story I want told the most, which has been hinted at in some comics, and mentioned in a few books, is like Luke Skywalker after Return of the Jedi. So it's hinted at in Battlefront 2 in the campaign mode.
Yes, when he meets Del Meeko.
Yep, and he's obviously hunting for Jedi artifacts. And I don't know if you spotted that, but the compass he gets from Del Meeko, that compass is in his house in The Last Jedi. It's in his hut.
Yes, yeah.
And then also in the new Kylo Ren comic, you see Luke hunting for Jedi temples with Lor San Tekka. Luke, Ben, and Lor San Tekka are hunting for Jedi temples. So sort of what Luke's doing before he sets up the training temple is what I'm after most. The secrets of the Force that he finds, how he goes from being Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight to being Luke Skywalker Jedi Master. And I think that for me, obviously, if you tell it in live action, you have to recast him and stuff, which I don't mind doing it if they do it tastefully and if they get the right guy in, that's fine. But I think that for me, like, I don't know, I'm not this person who's like, oh, it has to be live action and it can't be animated or told in comics. Like, there's many different forms of telling stories, and like Star Wars lends itself to all of them because Star Wars is essentially the story of good versus evil, and that can fit into any medium whatsoever if it's told well. So that's the story.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So that's the story I want told most, and like I don't know. I think I want it told as a comic book because I think some of the visuals you could get would be brilliant. But so that's the story I want told the most. The story I want told the most for television, so let's just say live action. I probably wouldn't mind seeing something like really, really old if it's going to be for live action television. So like maybe like a Knights of the Old Republic series. Obviously, we're getting the High Republic coming soon. It's like it's a publishing initiative from Lucasfilm. It's going to be across books and comics. And that's like after the Old Republic, but before the Republic was seeing Phantom Menace. And like that era of the Republic. So if you're going to go further back, I probably wouldn't mind seeing like Old Republic dealing with the Sith Lords when they weren't the ruler too. I mean, there's a trilogy of books that aren't canon by Drew Karshipian, if that's how you pronounce his name. I always butcher names on this podcast. And it's the Darth Bane trilogy, Rule of Two. And it tells the story how Darth Bane tricks the Sith into sort of self-destructing, and then he takes on an apprentice, and then he's like going to be Rule of Two from now on. So it doesn't have to be that story. Like, do you know what I mean? If they decide to get rid of that character and get rid of that stuff, that's sort of like not fine with me. But like, I'm happy to, like, if they give us a good story, they give us a good story. Do you know what I mean? So, but something telling us, obviously, we know the Sith were Legion. We know that there's now only Rule of Two. And then for some reason, by Rise of Skywalker, just Rule of One. For no explanation. But yeah, so like maybe looking at the Sith and how the Sith were once Legion and how they become the Rule of Two would make for a really good TV show. I think you could get some Game of Thrones vibes in there. Some like Vikings vibes. If anyone watched Vikings, some Vikings vibes in there. While also getting like the Mandalorian show vibes in there. And I think that would make for really, really awesome storytelling, and it would give all the fans good bits of knowledge about that era, and also it's that far removed that it's not connected to any characters that like in the canon at the minute that people hold too dearly. So you can make people love and hate the characters the creators wanted, like that's because there'd be new characters.
Definitely.
Have you got any?
Sounds good. Let's get it made.
Yeah, well, I'll show run it if you put the money up.
Yeah, I think I've got a £5 floating around my room somewhere. We'll start a fund.
Crowdfunding. Well, if you get a walking stick, you can just walk around your garden loads of times, and then we'll get money.
That's how I do it.
No, I'm just joking there. Captain Tom is a good guy. I'm just joking. He's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
Is it my question for you?
Yes, yeah, it is.
What's your favourite film to watch in the Star Wars movies? So, like, what's the one you'd love to just put on at any time and just watch?
Ooh.
Or it could be your favourite, either or.
Part of me was going to say Rogue One, just because obviously it obviously does fit into the universe, but it is a standalone story, like, but then I have to be in a very good mind space to watch Rogue One, just because the ending makes me cry.
Well, you know what they say, Star Wars is tragedy.
Star Wars is tragedy. Do you know what? Probably Return of the Jedi. And I love that film. And I said this where I used to work, like when I'd seen the new one, and I was like, it's no Return of the Jedi, but I liked it. And they were like, you think Return of the Jedi is the best Star Wars film? And I was like, do you know what? I do. And I'll stand by it. So yeah, probably like I can just pop it on. I know where I'm at with it. Like as soon as it starts, I'm like, yeah, I get what's going on. And I love it. But I think the thing I love about the Star Wars films is there's never like one like story going off through all of it. Like it'll zip and zag between like loads of different ones, but they're all done well, and I appreciate that. Like I appreciate there's a lot to watch and there's a lot to take in, and I think that happens best in Return of the Jedi. It's just my opinion.
No, well, I think like you've got to remember that like obviously like George was greatly influenced by the sort of the serial dramas of the 50s and onwards. So like when he was a kid, he'd watch Flash Gordon and stuff, which was like a serial drama. So like you wouldn't need to technically have watched the episode before, if that makes sense. And it's the same like if you go into Clone Wars, how like if you watch episode of Clone Wars, you get that little introduction at the start, like the voice of War does like the narration. So like again, that's why you have the crawl text before the movie. It's like, oh well, here's where the story's up to. Bang, there you go. We've told you everything you need to know to enjoy it. Obviously, if you know more, you'll enjoy it more. But like I feel like if you just read the crawl and watch the movie, the crawl gives you enough to where you can enjoy the movie for its like sole story point of view. And obviously, and if you watch them all, you understand the grand whole bit. But I think Return of the Jedi, I think like I don't know. Obviously, Empire Strikes Back is a masterpiece, and everybody loves it. But I think Return of the Jedi, like the themes that deals with the theme of sort of Luke. It deals with temptation. Luke's tempted by the dark side of the Force. It deals with redemption. Anakin's tempted by the light side of the Force at the end, and it is essentially the love of his son that makes him that redeems him. Obviously, you have the victory as well. So that's so it's an awesome ending. You get the victory. It's probably got the best space battle ever filmed at the end of it. Even now, like 1983, that's the greatest space battle I've ever seen. Is that space battle?
Yeah.
And then the way that's cut with the ground battle going on the surface of Endor is absolutely brilliant. Like the pacing's brilliant. I think the movie's paced brilliant as well. Like obviously you start off on Tatooine, somewhere we've seen before.
But that's what I mean. Like you go so many places, and I think it would have been so easy for it to feel like you'd only spent a couple of minutes in each of them, or like things had been rushed through. But you get to the end of the film, and you're like, no, like everything's been dealt with. Like nothing felt rushed. It, as you say, it is just paced brilliantly. Like it's done so well. And then I think, especially for me, because obviously I got to watch all the Star Wars films when I was really little, and that's the joy of being born when I was. I obviously loved the Ewoks because they were cuddly teddy bears to me. I was like, oh, it's a teddy bear. I want a teddy bear. I love the Ewoks. And I think that sticks in my mind as well. And I think that's part of why I love watching it, because it just takes it. I don't know, it just fills us with like this warmth of when I was a kid and just like, look at the little teddy bears, look at the Ewoks.
Yeah.
And I think that has a joy to it. And the relationships between like Leia and the Ewoks, and then the scene where they're in the camp and like the thing C-3PO's the god, and I don't know why that just always cracked me up as a kid. Like it was just good. It was just good.
Yeah, definitely. Like people don't realize like just how funny Star Wars is. It's all filled with humor. The story of Star Wars is like filled in so much myth and legend, and it's very deep on emotional levels. But it is a children's story, so you have to have that humor there. And like 3PO is basically there for the humor quite a lot of time. If you look at Empire, which is such a dark movie, it's sort of his back and forth with Han Solo throughout the whole film.
Yeah,
that gives you those little humor bites.
He has my favourite bit in Rise of Skywalker as well, where like obviously he's had his memory wiped and everything, and Babu Frick introduces him like, "Hi, I'm Babu Frick," and then like later on he's like, "Babu Frick," he's like one of my oldest friends, and I don't know why that just really made me happy, like so much. Like as I say, I don't really get why it made us laugh as much as it did, but it did. I do love C-3PO.
No, yeah, like that's what he's there for. Like as a character, he's there to sort of ease the tension, because he's often feeling the tension of the story.
Yeah,
like he's a very nervous guy. He suffers from anxiety, I think. But then the way he goes on his back and forth with the characters, like is the humor that eases the tension on the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think Return of the Jedi is a really great shout. It's a really great movie. I think like You got to remember this movies where we get Palpatine, the Emperor,
Yeah.
like in all of his glory. We get Luke finally confronting his demons. We get Lando Calrissian making up for his mistakes of the past.
Mm-hmm.
We finally get to see the crime syndicate of Jabba the Hutt.
Yes.
So we get a lot of stuff. We get obviously we're only on Dagobah for a short time, but obviously we get Yoda's death and like how powerful that is.
Forever sleep. It's
Yeah.
very emotional.
No, it is. Yeah, I mean, we're only there for a little bit, as you said, but when we're there, we get like all the emotion like driven into us from the theme, from the dialogue, from Mark Hamill's acting, from the performance of the puppet, the emotion we get out of the performance of the puppet. Like all of that, it comes across straight away. And that's when when Luke returns, like obviously he doesn't tell them what he's gone through, but it's like, do you know what I mean? His friends died.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fundamental experience.
No, definitely. What's your next question for me, Katie?
Okay, so my next question for you is, who is the most underrated Star Wars character, or one that you think gets a lot of undeserved hate?
I mean, you think about hate, like Jar Jar Binks straight away.
Yeah, he gets a lot of stick.
But you got to remember that he got hate like back in like 1999. So like social media wasn't a thing then. So you would have had publications driving that because the internet wasn't
Yeah.
internet from a consumer point of view wasn't what it is. So like big businesses might have had it, but the internet wasn't a thing where like everybody could go on it how they do now. But like I said, like you got to remember that like Jar Jar's a really funny character. He's there to laugh at. He's there to laugh with. He's there to ease the tension.
Yeah.
Don't you got to remember like Phantom Menace is a story of a trade dispute turned into like a war.
Yeah.
And it's like that's not a nice thing to deal with. Do you know what I mean? It's quite sinister. And you've got the sinister Sith Lord pulling the strings in the background of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got like you need your humour somewhere. As I said before, C-3PO is often the humour in Star Wars. So at the beginning of this movie, he's not in the movie yet. So like you need that humour from somewhere. And do you go, all right, we'll make Obi-Wan funny, or we'll make Qui-Gon Jinn funny? Probably not, because they're your main giant characters and they need to be serious. Do you make the Queen funny? Probably can't make the Queen funny because she's dealing with a lot of stuff. Like people are dying, people are being imprisoned. So you can't make her funny. So who do you make funny? Oh, well, we'll introduce this character who has a good heart and wants to help our heroes. But he's very clumsy and he's from a different world. So he doesn't know about droids and spaceships. He lives in the sea. He knows about fish. You know, and I get it that the dialogue's like over the top funny. And like he's sometimes over the top clumsy, but again, you got to remember Star Wars is made for children.
Well, this is the thing. Like, I resonated a lot with Jar Jar because, as you know, Peter, when I was a child, I had a lot of trips to A&E. Like, I was a very clumsy child, and I saw myself represented in Jar Jar Binks, and I'm not afraid to say that.
Yeah, and I mean, like I know that some people say like his dialogue's meant to be like, I don't know, a bit racist supposedly, but I mean like I don't know that, and like as a white male I probably wouldn't know that, but I think you got to remember that like Ahmed Best, who played him, is a black man and he didn't have any problem.
Yeah.
So like I think if there was a serious issue with that, I think he would be the first to voice up. But I think like you got to remember as well that like Jar Jar Binks is the first like mocap character in cinema history.
Yeah.
So without Jar Jar Binks, you don't get Gollum in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's very much a stepping stone.
And George was pushing the boundaries straight away. I mean, there's a great bit in the documentary. There's a documentary making of the Phantom Menace. And so ILM like buy this suit, and I think it's like $100,000 or something. And then George's like, buy the suit, and then they do it, and then they find out that like, oh, we don't actually need the suit. We could probably just like map his body on using the dots. And George is like, oh, so could have saved $100,000. So it's quite funny. But I think like you got to remember this, like people hating on a character for no reason. Like he's not a big part of the movie. Like, you know what I mean? It's not as if they took Obi-Wan Kenobi and made him like farcical. It's not as if they took Darth Maul or Palpatine and made him farcical. Like he's a new character they've introduced, and I think that like. I think they hate. I mean, hate's a strong word, and hate's uncalled for, especially with something as hating a character from a movie. Like a character in a movie is never going to do anything wrong to you. But, like more people hate Jar Jar Binks than they hate world leaders who are like actually ripping their lives apart. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's probably where hate needs to be at. But I think if you look at like what Ahmed Best sort of said, where like he did an Instagram post, I think it was last year, where it was like him on this jetty. It was him and his son, and he was like, "Oh, like a while ago I stood here by myself," and he was contemplating ending his own life. And that's because of like the constant backlash and hate going towards him just because he played a character one time. And it's just like, do you know what I mean? I think that like, if you look at the way Simon Pegg went on during that time, like he certainly helped foster that idea that you could be hateful towards things just because you didn't like them. And
I think as well it's sad because it shows in these nigh on 2 decades since that happened, we haven't gotten better, we haven't learned from it, because like look at Kelly Marie Tran, who like she took herself off social media. Everyone was so aggressive towards the character, and like it was a good character. Like it had its part in telling the story. It advanced things on. Like I loved Rose Tico, and like Kelly Marie Tran. I've never met her. But from the clips I've seen and interviews given, she seems like such a pure soul, and it breaks my heart to think that for a moment, or for many moments, she has thought things are so bad. I'm having to take myself off social media.
Yeah, I mean, I think this like I think like those people who do that are bad people. So like, it's not a case of, oh, I'm a nice person, but I hate that character so much that I'm going to badmouth the actor who played the character. It's like, well, like, no, like if you're doing that, then like you're probably being negative in that way in all aspects of your life, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Like you're not a nice person. Like, is the character like? I'm not a big fan of Rise of Skywalker. Like, it's all right. I enjoyed the movies. I watched it again the other day, but like I've got a few issues with the script, but like I'm not out there. I mean, I don't really tweet about it at all, and B, like I certainly don't go writing letters to Chris Terrio saying nasty things. Like, I am sure they set out to make a lovely movie.
Yeah.
And guess what? There's a lot of people who love that movie. So I'm not necessarily right to have criticism. I just do have criticism, but I keep that to myself more or less. I talk about when it comes up on the podcast sometimes, but I'm not like over the top with it where I'm like messaging creators or messaging actors. I think that's too far, and I think that like it goes to show that it happened before. It happened here in 1999 before social media was a thing. So it goes to like people can be like, "Oh, social media is a bad tool." It's like no, like people are bad, and then you give them a tool, and then those bad people do bad things. I
think whenever I've seen like you give criticism of things, like you always have a reason why you didn't like it, and like it's always a fair reason, and then you always kind of round it off with like, "I get why they did it though." Like, and I think that's what people need to realize. Like, they could not have made a film that pleased every single person. There are millions, if not billions, of Star Wars fans in the world. Like, you can't make a film that gets it spot on right for everyone, because it would just be feasibly impossible. And I think people need to understand that as well. And like the whole point, if you're that bothered and you really want a story that ends the way you go and write the story, go and write your own story and have it end the way you want it to. Like, but while someone else is putting in all that hard work, appreciate it and just say, "Oh, thanks for that. That was great."
Yeah, so it's nothing like at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Kelly Marie Tran's doing that job. She's been given a character, been given a script, and she's thingy. So like, to go after her so hard was just to go after anybody so hard. I mean, if you look, like, she's come off social media, Daisy Ridley's come off social media. Like, they haven't come off. Like, that's not like that's on purpose. Right, they've come off. There's a reason for that. But again, I think it's I don't think it's necessarily a problem in the fandom.
Oh
I think
yeah.
it's a problem like in the world. Like that's how a lot of people go on like that, and sadly when they're
Oh,
being that
definitely.
boisterous, it's loud as well. So it's
Definitely.
hard to
I agree.
avoid. But yeah, so like I think Jar Jar gets a lot of hate, undeservedly so. I think I've already discussed sort of why he's in the movie. He's there for comic relief. He's there to ease attention on what's quite a serious movie. All the other characters in the film sort of need to be serious because of what's going on around them. So like really, like he is this film's C-3PO. Like he's there for the comic relief. And then as you see, once episode 2 and 3 come along, and C-3PO's in them more,
Mm-hmm.
Jar Jar's in it less. Because obviously we've got the comic relief there now. If that makes sense. So yeah, like he's like for me, like it's totally undeserved what went on with that character, and like it's 100% not acceptable to drive a man nearly to suicide, which I think is what a lot of these fans, well, not a lot, but a lot of these people who were sort of being very disgusting and voicing a lot of negativity towards Jar Jar, like that's what them people did. They drove on the best to nearly do that. But it was great to see full circle. Like I saw a celebration in April last year. Like I was in the Phantom Menace 20th anniversary panel, and obviously like celebration. I've been to 3 celebrations, and these fans who are so negative, and I say fans, I don't think they are fans because you never see them or hear them at a thing like Star Wars Celebration. They're just like keyboard warriors at home, just bashing out like hate. But when it comes to an event where you've got to spend your money and go and enjoy something, like they don't do it. Because obviously you don't have that drive to be a real fan. And like say like the stand ovation that Armor Best got when he come out and he got it all weekend. I think it was good to see him enjoying it, and it was good to see everyone doing it. It was just a case of like, look, like those fans who were very, very horrible to you, like they aren't all of the fans. In fact, they're probably a minuscule amount that is really loud. But right here and now, this is the real Star Wars.
Yeah.
And we're sending you love.
No, cool. Yeah.
So that was really, really cool. And another underrated character would be Dexter from Dexter's Diner. Just because, he tells Obi-Wan he wouldn't have found Kamino without him.
You love Dexter.
Because them droids just focus on symbols.
Very true.
But it's the cuts on the side that give it away. So without that, can we even find the army? So very, very, very important that plot of that whole movie.
He's a good character. He seems a good guy.
He is, yeah. I like his diner. I would love to go and have a cup of Java juice one day. Is it my turn to ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, who is your favourite character from each trilogy and why?
Okay. So, obviously, in the original trilogy, it's Leia. Just because, like, I cannot underestimate the importance of that character. Or I cannot overestimate, rather, the importance of that character to, like, I mean, young people over, but, like, young girls especially. Because, you know, when we first see Princess Leia, she's very young. Like, did they ever put an age on her? In my head, she's like a teenager, late teens, early 20s.
Well, she's the same age as the twins, aren't they? So she's the same age as Luke. I think they're around 1920, I believe. She's a senator in the
she's got
Imperial Senate.
A lot going on. She's very outspoken. As you say, she's a senator. She's got that responsibility. But I think just teaching the lesson that some princesses don't need rescuing. That, you know, you can rescue yourself. You don't need to be reliant on other people to save you. Like, it's good to sometimes have other people and things like that, but you can save yourself. You don't need permission to do things. You can go out and do them yourself because you think it's the right thing to do, or because it's what needs to be done. And you know, we see her like as a leader. We see her on the battlefield. We see her making plans. We see her taking risks and getting every bit involved on the front line as Han and Luke. And it was never like, well, you can't do that because you're a woman. And I think even today, there are still limitations where things like that happen. Like, well, no, you're a woman. Like, you can't really go off and do that. And to see Leia out there doing all the same things the guys were doing and doing it just as well, and not having like, she's the one that comes up with some of the plans to save them. So Princess Leia, definitely my favorite character. Also, she's very like, she's quite sarcastic with her wit, and I appreciate that as well. But yeah, looking up, like growing up, I had like Princess Leia to look up to, and that's, it's a good role model to have. Like, there's a reason why people like love the character of Leia so much, and part of it is the character, and part of it is Carrie Fisher's performance. But like, you look at those women's marches, like there's so many signs that have Princess Leia on them. Like, it is a cultural phenomenon, because I wasn't the only person who felt like this. I wasn't the only person who felt like they suddenly had some much needed representation. That's not me saying she's the only female character like that, or she was the first like that, because I know that's not the case at all. But in terms of me accessing those stories, she's the first one I can really remember, because as I say, like, I've grown up with Star Wars. Like, I've, in my head, I know obviously I couldn't have always seen Star Wars, but I can't remember a time when I hadn't seen those films, because obviously they were just on because you had them on. So like, from where my memory starts, there's always been Star Wars. Like, it's always been there. In the prequel trilogy.
So just to talk about Leia. So obviously, I think you got to remember, like, obviously, like, Carrie Fisher has sadly passed away now, and it's been a number of years since she passed away. But like, as you said there, like, she's still on the. I mean, if you look in the film world, she's still just been the main part of the latest movie. So that's how integral she is to Star Wars, like the character Leia Organa. But then also, if you look in the real world, like, say Carrie Fisher's been gone a number of years, but like, it's still her face on these banners, it's still her quotes that are part of these political marches and these women's marches. So even after death, she's still influencing generations of people
Carrie
to come.
Fisher was. I don't even want to say once in a generation, because I think that says there's more people like her than there is. But she was like a fixed point in time. There was never someone like Carrie Fisher before, and I don't think there'll be anyone like her again. Like, it's obviously, people get saddened when celebrities or whatever pass away, but I never felt pain for someone I'd never met, like when Carrie died. And I found it very odd, because in my head I was like, I've never met her, like, I don't know her, we're not friends, and yet it really, like, it left me a bit heartbroken. And I was watching an episode of Smallville the other day, and I forgot Carrie Fisher had been in Smallville, and her face popped up on the screen, and it caught me really off guard, and I got really emotional. And it's just, I think it had so much to do with who she was. She was, again, part in how she carried herself as a person. I think, especially in later life, she was very much, look, I'm here for me. I'm going to do what's right for me. I don't care what other people think. Like, I'm living my life the way I want to live it, which is a very important lesson. But like, in the role models she gave everyone, but especially young women, in terms of Leah and in terms of as herself. But yeah, like, I don't think there'll ever be words in the English language that can describe how, like, much of a one-off Carrie Fisher was.
Oh, definitely. And I think if you go back to sort of like the episode 4, New Hope, like, you gotta remember that, like, Han and Luke don't go to the Death Star to rescue her. Like, they're trying to reach Alderaan, and then they end up landing the Death Star because something else has happened which they don't know about. Obviously, Alderaan's been blown up, and the Death Star's in its place. And like, then they decide to rescue her when they find out she's there, when they check the computer. And Han's only sort of half-arsed on the plan. Luke's been in another farm his whole life. So, like, the plan is to march into the detention centre, cause havoc. It's a one-way in, one-way out system, by the way, the detention centre. So they let her out the cell. But then, other than that, the rest of the plan is shit.
It's terrible.
Sorry for the
terrible
language, but it is. It is. And, like, she's like, what's the plan? And like, oh, well, we're going to stand here in this corridor and just shoot down there until,
That's
like,
me on
the
Battlefront
enemy
2.
dies. But, like, the enemies... But the enemy's got infinite enemies. Like, they've got so many troopers on that planet that if they kill 10, another 10 will come through the door. And that's when she, like, takes a blaster, shoots the drain. It's like, I'll get out the firing line. Into the garbage chute. What should I say?
No, she does.
Squam flyboy or
Kind of
squam something else that pen. But yeah. Because yes, they have let her out of the cell. But I think she very much realises straight away that, like, this is not a plan.
Yeah.
Because it actually isn't a plan. Like, I haven't got a plan.
Yeah. From the prequel trilogy, I think, again, I'm gonna have to say Padme, like, simply because, like, for similar reasons, in terms of, like, here was a badass woman who, again, had that power. She was in the Senate. She was obviously very learned in her field, and, like, what she knew, she was very clear on her principles. Like, she wasn't going to have her people suffering. She wasn't also going to get herself out of the firing line and leave her people in them. And I think I had a lot of respect for that. And I think in my head, that's how political leaders should be. But they're not. They all need to be a bit more like Padme Amidala. But like, even in Attack of the Clones, when they're on, it's Geonosis, isn't it? Like, and she fights back, and, like, again, straight away, she's in the mist. There's no argument of her, like, not going and fighting alongside Anakin and Obi-Wan. And yeah, another strong character. And then in terms of the sequel trilogy, I do love BB-8. I do love Babu. I love small characters in that, like BB-8, Babu Frick. But Amelin Holdo, just for the way she takes the flack from Poe in that, like, and she doesn't begrudge him for it. She, like, kind of understands where he's coming from, like, in the way she deals with it afterwards. Like, she could, like, have shouted and screamed at him. She didn't. She was very, she understood, like, he's still got a lot to learn. She was very understanding. And I think part of that is because she was so confident in her abilities. She knew what she knew. She knew what she was going to do. She knew she had her plan, and she was going to hold steady and carry it out. And I think there's a lot to be learned in being very sure and confident in your abilities. And I'm going to say this, and I don't for a second think Poe Dameron is the type of character who would treat a woman differently than a man. But as a woman, it's very easy for him. Like, quite often, you'll come up with things and you'll be questioned a lot, and it's especially by men. Like, again, I'm not saying Poe Dameron's that type of character, but like, he was just the character in the story that was there. And to see her hold her own and be like, no, this plan, it's my plan, for her to sit there and carry it out and get it done, I think is an important lesson.
You got to remember that, like, obviously the problem with that whole thing is that, like, Poe's problem is that, like, she doesn't tell him the plan. So, like, and that's why he goes on.
No,
so he thinks
that's what I mean. I'm not.
So he comes up with a plan. So like, and I think obviously it might be because she's a woman, but also it's because like
yeah,
he's never met her
I don't
before.
think it is in that situation. Like Paul's not done that because she's a woman, but I'm just saying quite often, especially women in leadership positions, do have their plans or their ideas or their leadership constantly questioned. And I think it was refreshing to see that happen and for her to have that confidence in what she was doing was very good. And then obviously, you know, she sacrifices herself in the end to save all those lives. And I think it was so often you do just see like it is, and it's just because even if you look at films now, the majority of characters are still men. So it's always men making the sacrifice play, and it's always men saving the day because it's men that are there in the films to do it. So I think to have those characters and do it, and they built it well, where they built like you had that emotional connection to her. Like they didn't just bring her in for 5 minutes and then yeeted her. Like it built and you kind of grew to understand, and then when you understand what she'd done as well, you appreciate it more. So I just think it was well done, and I loved the character of Holdo. And if I had a series made, it would be about Holdo, and I'd want to know all about what she'd been doing to get her to that point.
So I want to recommend you a book. It's called Leia, Princess of Alderaan, and I believe it tells the story of how a young Leia meets a young Holdo, and they become friends.
Get it on the wish list. I'll put it on.
I believe it's written by Claudia Gray, I think.
Stars, isn't she? Or who wrote Lost Stars?
I think it's Claudia Gray. Let me double check, because I might just...
I'll double check it for you here. Princess of Alderaan. Yeah, Claudia Gray.
There we go.
There we go. We'll get it on the Amazon wish list. Is it time for me to ask you a question? I think it is, isn't it?
What?
Okay, so question 4. If you could visit one planet or place, so it could be like a small specific location, like you might want to go to Dexter's Diner, or it could be a planet or a city. So a planet or place from Star Wars, where would it be and why?
That's a tough one. I think well, based on Jedi Fallen Order, I would not go to Dathomir. I can tell you that much.
Fun.
That's a horrible
Every
place.
2 seconds, something else is jumping out, and I was just like, I can't do this. I need a break.
Yeah. No, I think
Okay.
I think I would mind going like Yavin 4. Like obviously the Rebel base is set up in like an old temple of some sort. And there's like a lot more of that there. So I would love to go and explore like more of like that sort of aspect. Or I don't know. Like I want to go like some like places with a rich history. It's like maybe the temples on Yavin 4, maybe even the whole Jedi structure on Act 2. Just looking at all the like original temple work there. You can see the same for Jeddah as well. Like those statues that are knocked over. I would love to like go to Jeddah like when it was easier to get there and like no Imperial occupation and like see what was going on and look at all the sort of all the things to do with the Force there. I think that would be really cool.
No, sounds great.
Trying to think. Yeah, like obviously, like, I mean, everybody would probably at some point wants to go to the canteen on Tatooine and just get some drinks, which would be cool. But like that would only last you so long. But like if you went somewhere where you could like proper explore, like I think exploring Jedi temples of old would be really, really fascinating. And I'm not saying, and I don't know what kind of temple it is on Yavin 4, but whatever that is would be cool to explore.
There we go.
Okay. So here's one for you. So if you could choose a video game to be set anywhere in the Star Wars galaxy, where would you choose it to be set? And sort of what sort of story would you want to play in a video game?
Ooh. That's a good question. Part of us would love the chance to play as Ahsoka Tano, but then part of us thinks like a new character in the way that Fallen Order introduced us to Cal Kestis. Because one of the things I do love about the Star Wars games is they add to canon. Like it's another way of getting more from the movies, but like the games are a really interactive way. Do it really well. From where we see Ahsoka, when she buries the rest of the 332, up until she pops up in Rebels, then doesn't she? But does she?
Is it not the 501st?
I thought hers were the 332. I thought hers were the 332.
Pardon? Rex is the 501st. Anakin Hoth's the 501st, isn't he?
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
So half the 501st go with Anakin, and they end up raiding the Jedi Temple with him. And the other half are with Ahsoka and end up dying in the crash.
Oh, okay. But from when... Anyway, from there, she next pops up in Rebels, doesn't she?
So there's a novel first, just called Ahsoka by E.K. Johnson.
But
so in canon, that's her next point.
I'd like to see...
in Rebels, yeah.
I don't know, maybe it could be fun to play through a game between those 2 points, either between her on that planet in the book or between the book and Rebels. And something similar in a way to Fallen Order, or I don't know, where she's trying to do something to save what she can of the Jedi or Force users, like her trying to do something good. Because even though she wasn't a Jedi when Order 66 went down, I still think she wouldn't, she as a character wouldn't have gave up on that. She would still be out there doing the right thing.
Well, if you watch Rebels, she ends up becoming like Fulcrum, which is essentially a rebel spy.
So maybe some adventures in that, in her being a rebel spy would be pretty cool.
I recommend you reading Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston. Then I believe it's a YA book. So it's pretty easy read, really good.
I'll get on it. I'll add it to the list. Oh, is it my turn for your final question? So, last question for you then, Pete.
Yep.
Favorite vehicle from Star Wars, and why is your favorite vehicle?
Probably Millennium Falcon. Like ever since you first see it on screen, it's like monumental. And then I remember when I was about 5 years old, and I got the Kenner Millennium Falcon.
I was going to say,
which I still have now. It's in my office now. I'm looking at it, and it's absolutely ruined. But I still just love looking at it. Even ruined it because it's a ship that is a piece of junk. Even when the toy itself is damaged, it still looks brilliant on display. So I think just the memories I have of not just watching that ship, but also my imagination of playing with that ship as well, is pretty cool. It's a tough question really because all the sort of ship designs are very iconic. Do you know what I mean? The X-wings, very iconic.
Yeah.
For me, the Falcon was always my favorite. And then when the prequel trilogy came out, I fell in love with the Jedi Interceptors. sort of the Jedi starfighters. So I definitely see the Falcon's number one, but I think it's something about like all the Star Wars, even the TIE fighters, the Naboo ships. Like, I mean, they're very different in style, but they're very definitive of what they are. I think like that makes it feel very visceral, very real. It's why when people go like, "Well, like Star Wars isn't real," like why do it so much? It's like it's because the story like hits home on such an emotional level and such a human level, but then the design and everything in the shows and in the movies, the design's very visceral and very real. You can like imagine it very easily. You can touch it very easily in your mind. On all the designs from like Slave One to TIE Fighter to A-Wing to X-Wing to like I said, the Naboo ships, the pod racers, like even the land speeder, like the speeder bikes, they're all very like I don't know. They're not real because obviously it's fantasy, but they look very real, and they feel very real, and they sound real. Like the sound design that goes into them, it all sort of comes together to tell the story. Like all the vehicles are sort of, I don't know. Like I never watched Star Wars and thought, "Oh, that Falcon doesn't look real." I was always just like, "Oh wow, like that's like looks so real." Like, and, like, do you know what I mean? And because it does like, because it breaks down a lot, like it's not as if it's like too good to be true. So yeah, it's a fastest ship in the galaxy, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it won't
just
fly.
needs a moment to sort itself out.
Well, a few moments if you're watching Empire Strikes Back. But yeah, so like, do you know what I mean? I think overall the ships are. I mean, the Falcon's probably a Star Wars character at this point. I think. Like that's like that reveal
if you
in
think
Force
about
Awakens, like it was
like
revealing the legacy character.
Like it has got a conscience. Like L3 is wired into the Falcon, so I'd count it as a character because I'd say it's it's got personality. Like it's for me, it's a character.
Yeah. Do you wish that Lando had acknowledged L3 in their Rise of Skywalker?
Yes, I do.
They missed the golden opportunity, didn't they?
Oh, I loved L3.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd say the Falcon, but I think like all of the ship design and all the vehicle design in Star Wars is part of what makes like us fans love Star Wars so much because, like I said, they are just so like so visceral. Like even if you look at Force Awakens, like the crashed Star Destroyers in Jakku. Like, do you know what I mean? Like straight away when I seen that panned up on the screen, I was like, "That's a Star Destroyer." That in the trailer, that's class. What a crashed Star Destroyer! Like just the scale of that is like in your brain starts getting like excited. Like, that's before you even see the movie. It's off the trailer.
Zephyr in Fallen Order, and there's the crashed Venator, and like again, that's huge, giant. And it's like,
do you ever see that? Do you ever see that crash from Far Out?
How do you mean?
So like when in the Clone Wars finale, like my first thoughts turned to
I
Zephyr.
don't know because Zephyr does have some ice in that, does it? Because I thought that I was like, oh, I wonder if that's that crash site. I don't know. You don't see from Far Out because once you get to it and you're there, like it's right in front of you in the game, and you don't get the chance. I think it would be very cool if it was, but I don't know if it is. But we don't know that. We can't confirm nor deny, so it could be.
Is that my last question for you now?
Last one.
Okay. Is there so if you could pick any actor or actress who hasn't been involved in the Star Wars, who would you choose and why?
Oh, that's a hard one. Off the top of my head, I'm gonna say Tatiana Maslany, simply just because she is so versatile. Like, you could give her any role and she could absolutely destroy it. So she is in Orphan Black, which is a show about clones, and she basically plays like all of the main characters. And you have to remind yourself when you're watching that it's her playing 7 characters. Like, you honestly think they're all different people. Like, the way she plays them is phenomenal. So I think she could do something incredible. Simply because she's just such an incredible actress. If it was quite an like actiony type role, like, obviously there's a lot of heavy stunts in The Mandalorian and stuff. Someone like Katie Lotz from Legends of Tomorrow in the Arrowverse, she like is trained in all those like martial arts and she does all her own stunts. And again, she's a very good actress, and I think she could really add something to the field. I'm trying to think who else. I don't know. Oh, it's a tough one because I think there's a lot of stories left to be told, and I think there's a lot of different types of characters that we could have. I think Tom Holland could play a very good, very excitable young Jedi. Like, if you did a story about like a young Padawan, or someone about to become a Padawan, or like in the later stages of their Padawan years, getting ready to become a master. So like sort of like the age we meet Obi-Wan at in the Phantom Menace. Like, I think he could do something incredible with that. Because he does kind of really excited well, but he also does very like heartfelt scenes well. But yeah, so Tatiana Maslany, Katie Lotz, Tom Holland.
So I think with Tatiana Maslany, I totally agree with you. So like between like 2014 and like 2018, like I think she's had quite a few meetings with Lucasfilm about stuff, and like just nothing's ever stuck.
Get it done. Get her in. Who do we need to write to?
So I think obviously waiting for like the right part to click. So like hopefully that they keep bringing her into readings, hopefully, and hopefully she gets something later because she is absolutely brilliant. It's funny, like in an episode that's going to go out before this one, myself, Geordie Jedi Alan, and Canon Junkie XL Ian we're discussing her and how good she is, and I think definitely needs to get involved. I always go for Viggo Mortensen, just because of his. If you ever watch the making of documentaries, like the appendices of all the Rings movies, like his sheer work rate is absolutely phenomenal. He's a great actor, and I think he could come in and play like a proper chiseled baddie, like a grizzly chiseled baddie, or he could play like a wise old good character, or he could play an assassin. Like, he could play probably almost anyone, and it wouldn't surprise you. So like, he could be the evilest of evilest. He could be the goodest of good. He could just be like a bounty hunter who doesn't have very many morals. He could play like all of those things that you would need. So like, I think he would be like a great shout, and because he works so hard on his craft, I think like it would come through in the character.
Definitely no. We'll love Viggo.
That brings us an end to the episode. It was great getting to know you, Katie. It was no me, Peter Adams, knowing you, Katie Adams. Aha. Where can the people find you on social media?
So you can find us on my Twitter at festivebake_. So just to add context for those that don't know, the Festive Bake is an item from my favourite train bakery, Greg's. And I'm a big fan of it, and that's why it's my Twitter handle. And when it comes out at Christmas, doesn't it? And Christmas is my favourite time of year. But yeah, festive bake_ on Twitter. Feel free to follow or like interact, ask any questions, free to chat about whatever.
And you're going to come back on the show to talk about
Yes,
Iden
going to talk
Versio?
about Inferno Squad, Battlefront 2, Iden Versio, and then hopefully as well get the chance on another one to talk about because obviously we did our the first time I was on the show we talked about Fallen Order, but it was before the game had came out. So we'll get the chance to talk about Fallen Order when we've played through it, and with the Dark Temple comic, the trade paperback that's just due to come out. It's on the pre-order. So once we've read through that, hopefully do something on that as well.
So Dark Temple is tying
Yes,
comic to the game,
yeah,
I believe.
and I think it's set before it tells us about Siri
In the,
Junda. Again, I've butchered that name.
during the Clone Wars.
Yeah. So that'll be good. And I'm excited to read that actually. Should arrive next week.
Yeah, it's going to be good to read.
After. So fun times.
Brilliant stuff, Katie. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and may the force be with you.
With you too.
Please follow us on Twitter at BoresStar. That's at BORESSTAR. And on Instagram and Facebook at Star Wars Podcast. You can also reach us on email at starwarspodcast@gmail.com. The Star Wars Show can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and wherever podcasts can be found. Please give us a like, subscribe, and don't forget to leave a 5-star review. May the Force be with you.